my name is Martin and welcome to another great edition of MP Astro. Now, as you can see here, behind me is the legendary Maksutov 180, and this has been super tuned and been converted into an astrograph. Now, if you've not seen those videos, please check them out at the top. I have done quite a few videos based around this project, and to be honest with you, this telescope never ever disappoints me whatsoever. It really is a good solid piece of equipment, really good on planets, and also it's a decent deep sky imager, particularly for the smaller objects which are the tiny galaxies, globular clusters, planetary nebulas, those kind of small targets which this telescope can really zoom in. Now, a lot of people will say, why do you want to spend a lot of money trying to convert this into an astrograph when it's still a slow telescope? And yes, it is a slow telescope, but you can still image as long as your tracking is good and you've got good pole alignment. Who cares about how fast or slow it is? You can get some really good images, and I've proven that on my last videos. I know there's a few of you loved the Maksutov videos, the Super Tune. I'm going to move over to the smaller variant of this type of telescope, and that is the most popular Maksutov 127. This covers within Skywatcher, Celestron, Orion Optics. You know, there's a lot of telescopes based around the Maksutov 127 Mac, but it really is the cousins of the legendary Meade 125 ETX. It was all based around that particular telescope. So now the other models that cover the 127 Mac are all based around that particular Maksutov. And it is a very popular telescope. It is very affordable, very compact, and will give you plenty of aperture. Alright. The only disadvantage of that particular telescope is, again, it is a slow telescope. It's round about f ratio of 11.83, which is almost f12. It's not the fastest telescope. So in this video, I'm going to take you through a journey to super tune the Maksutov 127mm. So before we start, please hit a like button. And again, if you are new to this channel, please subscribe onto this channel. Don't forget to share this video out. There may be someone who owns a Maksutov 127 Mac and they want to undertake that particular project. Alright, and don't forget, if you want to keep notified of any videos I publish out, don't forget to hit the bell, scroll up and select all, and you'll be notified for any new videos. So to that on, if you want to find out what I'm going to do to my Maksutov 127 Mac, please keep watching and let's do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the original dovetail bar. Obviously I had a Vixen dovetail on these screws here. I've removed that one, but this one is the original dovetail bracket. And again, you will see why I want to get rid of this dovetail, right? And this is for the reasons. So get yourself a cross point screwdriver, right, and you take off these two screws at the bottom. So you've got one here and you've got the one at the top. Okay, these are tiny screws. As we lift out the dovetail bar, you'll see two holes, and these are the tiny screws, and as you can see there, these really are horrendous. They're like metric 5 bolts holding the entire assembly. So this is the reason why I want to replace the existing Skywatcher bracket. Alright, I don't know why Skywatcher cheap out on an awesome optical tube like this on something with cheap stuff like this. I don't get that. And what you'll see here, I have marked out a bit of tape, and with that tape I've scored a line across using a sharp knife. Alright, so this tape is my marker, And what we're going to do is we're going to unscrew the main compound lens, okay? This will be tight. So luckily I've already removed this before many times, but if this is tight, use a strap spanner, okay? I will provide a link of a typical strap spanner to unscrew it, and with that you unscrew it counterclockwise, okay? So you unscrew it like so, alright, carefully, okay? So holding both ends, alright, and you just unscrew it all the way out like so. Now you've probably seen this on another video that I've done many years ago about taking this apart, but it really is quite simple, right? Yes, you'll lose a bit of the collimation, but that's why we put the tape on there, to provide that you have that collimation retained again. So it took quite a few threads and you just screw it out like so. You can then put the compound element, put it back in a safe place. I will put this in a dust free, away from any dust. I put it in a container for safekeeping. However, I want to flock the tube, and what we have here is some flocking material from First Light Optics. This is 45 centimeters long, all right, and 20 centimeters in length. Now you think that's a bit too short, but what you've got to understand is inside the tube there's a thread. So all we want to do is to just partially cover all the way around the inside of that tube to flock the inside. And also the reason why I'm flocking it is to cover up these drilled holes, all right, so we don't get no light leakage. So it's another really good modification. I've done this many times before. Highly recommend getting this flocking material. It's not very expensive and you don't need a lot of material to do it. Now I have done a video based on how to flock a main tube. I am not going to cover this in this video because at the end of the day, what's the point? All I've got to say is as you flock the tube, you've got to be careful of the primary mirror. Top tip, when you're installing the flocking material, just quickly use a fabric cleaner, roller brush, right, just to get rid of the lint before you install it. Basically what that does, it just cleans up the flocking material and stops any debris from falling onto the optics, and you just basically just clean it up like so. So we're going to install it into the main tube carefully. All right, I'm going to thread it, going to put it around about here. All right, so I'm not going to go flock all the way down to the primary mirror. All right, this is going to be away from the primary mirror, and I'm just going to slowly install it carefully, all right, without touching the primary mirror. All right, this also needs to be in line with the threaded part, so basically you don't want any flocking material to go in the way of the threaded part for your compound element. All right, so this will help to improve the contrast. All right, if you've not seen the flocking video, I suggest you check it out from the top. All right, I do highlight in great detail and the improvements it makes to a telescope when it is flocked. So if you're struggling to flock the tube, don't worry, just mark that position there. Now with this optical tube, you'll need a ratchet strap to unscrew this counterclockwise, okay? Luckily for me, I've already stripped this before, and I can just loosen it just like that, okay? So remove the refocus mechanism because obviously this is in the way. So I'm going to also take off these screws as well for the dovetail on the Finderscope. All right, so I remove this is just screwed on, okay, by just these screws onto the main tube. All right, and this should just remove off. Now, because I've had to remove the dovetail because of my focus mechanisms in the way. All right, so basically now I can unscrew this part. Now, bear in mind there is an O-ring in between the optical tube and the focuser assembly. Alright. So it takes quite a few screws. Okay, and it just moves straight out like that. Okay. You're now getting access to the actual priming mirror and the actual focusing mechanism. You've got an O-ring here. If this breaks, you can always repair it back. Alright, this O-ring is very tiny. You see this tiny O-ring here. Alright, don't worry if it breaks, you can always glue it back on using super glue. Alright, so you can always repair that O-ring. So that is a better way to flop the main tube, alright, like so, right, properly, and do it. It makes it a little bit easier. Alright, this is just screwed in. That's all it is. There's no need to slacken the collimation screws or the actual clamps to the focuser, alright? There's no need to strip it all out, alright? All you need to do is clean it, obviously take that apart, make sure you don't get any grease on the primary mirror as you do it, alright? And that's all it is, right? The whole assembly comes apart like that. It really is that easy. You can then flop the tube like so, and it's not a problem. So now we grab our primary mirror, alright, and we're going to, after you flop the tube, alright, you're going to screw it back on. Now I cleaned it up slightly with obviously basically I just use a blow brush and gently just use a little bit of Baader cleaning fluid on a proper Baader lens tissue, like that, lens cloth, alright, and I just basically wipe it from inside outwards carefully. It is quite more robust compared to a Newtonian reflector coatings, but I just gently just wipe off slowly just to get some of the dirt from the primary mirror. This has got much stronger coatings compared to a Newtonian reflector, but you've got to treat it like a Newtonian reflector in a way. Personally, only do it as a need basis. This was really dirty. If you've got a speck of dust, it doesn't matter. All you have to do is just blow it out with a blow brush, alright? But if it's not that dirty, leave it alone. Just take a bit of dust motes off it, alright? It's not going to harm the optics. So now, as you can see, I've flopped the tube, alright? And I've only done it to about 880 millimeters long, alright? Because this optical tube sticks into there quite a bit, alright, there's no need to flock it all the way to the end. Alright, so now what we're going to do is going to line it up. As you see, we've got that part there marked up on the optical tube. Alright, easiest way to remember is your label is this way. Alright, and you're just going to line it up like so. Alright, and we're going to vertically lift it up and screw it in there. Like so. Alright, just screw it in there, providing that your O-ring is intact. Okay, so you just screw it in there like so. So as you can see, I've had to do several attempts, so I managed to get that O-ring secured. And what I did was actually had to cut the O-ring in a little bit off the O-ring and then super glue it back on, because obviously it's elongated with age. And what I did then is place the O-ring on the lip of the primary mirror, and then I had to put blobs of super glue between the mirror cell and all that to keep it secure, because it kept moving all the time. So now I'll be able to screw this in. Alright, screw this in, and now I know that the O-ring is not going to go anywhere. So I just keep screwing it in all the way in, alright, until I get this O-ring to properly seat in there. So again, the O-ring is an absolute pain. So I had to twist it and untwist it to try and position the O-ring to get it all in line. But as you can see now, where we've marked our part there, we've now managed to screw it all the way in, and the O-ring is still intact. I'm not going to lie to you guys and girls and everyone, this is an absolute pain in the butt, right, to get this right. But now we've got this properly seated now, and the O-ring's intact, and that is now the rear mirror cell connected up now to the main tube. So yes, I've took several attempts, it's not easy, but as you can see now we've got a flock tube. It looks really nice and darkened, and with those exposed holes now we are not going to risk any problems with any light source entering into the main tube. We'll now install our meniscus lens. This is actually the easiest part, and again you just screw this in clockwise, and this will go in nice and easy. So yeah, I had to do several cuts to get this right. This O-ring is an absolute pain, so we just screw this in like so. Yeah, it takes some time, but once you've got it right, you just screw this in all the way in until your markings line up like so. That is now that fully tightened, both marks are lined up. You will have to collimate the Maksutov again, but again I did a video a good long time ago to get this right. Please check that video out, and obviously that video will help you collimate the optics on the Maksutov. So from that on is that is now the optical tube installed. We've now put back the existing dovetail for the Maksutov bracket. So we put the dovetail back onto the Finderscope bracket. The Finderscope dovetail in place like so. That is now the optical tube fully assembled. So now remove the markings, the tape markings, and a good opportunity to clean the meniscus lens, and look at the flocking now. Wow, you can hardly see the inside of the tube now, so it really has darkened the optical tube, all right, a lot. So it is worth it, all right. If you don't need to do this, all right, or chance it, all right. It is difficult to do, particularly with that O-ring keeps moving about, and as you put in the primary mirror in. And like I say, it's not for the faint-hearted. But again, if you're good with tools and you've got a bit of patience, you can flock the tube, or you can paint the tube inside using flocking paint as well. But personally, the flocking paint is rather expensive, but it's a lot easier to do. But again, you've still got to be careful with the primary mirror, so you still got to remove the primary mirror to do that. Alright, but as you see the results there, you've got a very well darkened inside tube. What's that going to do is reduce glare and help to increase contrast on your objects. So the next modifications is this. What I've got here is I've got a 7-inch long Losmandy dovetail. As you can see, this is done by Altair Astro. You can pick these up for around about £38. Alright, and you get the screws here to mount it onto your scope rings. So you can get a Losmandy dovetail. I prefer Losmandy, particularly for the Maksutovs. Alright, they are quite heavy scopes sometimes, but I like this one because this supports the optical tube better. As you can see here, we've got some scope rings from ORION Optics. These scope rings are 145 in diameter, and if you can find these type of scope rings, alright, these are very old scope rings, but these will fit the optical tube of the Maksutov. Again, I've installed a dovetail to fit a Finderscope or guide scope. Here, these are really good because they're 145 in diameter. This will fit perfectly on the Maksutov 127. And as you can see, as we install these scope rings, the optical tube sits much better, right? Much better. And I do like the clamping system on the ORION Optics. Again, if you can find this type of if you can find these scope rings, these are quite old now, but I don't think they no longer make these anymore. But 145 diameter is what you're looking for scope rings. All right, and as you can see there now, these scope rings fit perfectly. They clamp better, and already a massive improvement on the Maksutov. So as you can see there, they fit perfectly on the optical tube, much better than the crappy Dovetail that you get. And look at the Dovetail. I don't know why Skywatcher just make scope rings for this type of telescope. All right, there should be scope rings, to be honest with you, on the Maksutov. And the good thing with scope rings is they're a lot more secure. You can always change the dovetail, so if you don't want a Vixen dovetail, you can swap it to a Losmandy. And the other thing is, you can mount other accessories on there. Alright, so you can fit another dovetail on there, for example, a dovetail on there to attach over the attachments. These scope rings can take another Losmandy dovetail bar on there if you wish. And like I say, I've got to save up a bit more money for that, but it's not a mad rush. I'm using the Finderscope bracket clamp system so that I can actually attach a 32mm guide scope with the trusty Zoo ISI 120 Mini. Alright, and that just clamps on there nice and snug. And you've got a nice guide scope system on there. Alright, already massive improvement. So we've flocked the tube, we've put better scope rings and a dovetail, and we've got some method of a guide scope to be fitted on there. So that's some of the upgrades I've done so far. The next upgrade you can do is, as we unscrew the nose piece, providing that you've got a scat thread. I believe that obviously Skywatcher now issue the proper scat thread now for the 127, but here you can install, as featured in the last video of turning the Skywatcher 180 into a astrograph. Again, please check that video out. Here you can install the Antares, install the f6.3 focal reducer. This focal reducer will fit nicely on there, right? And with that, you put your nose piece in there installed, like with the Mac 180, and we have turned this into a fast Maksutov. So this is usually around about f ratio 11.8. This will turn this around an f 7.6, I believe. All right, so which is still pretty slow. I'm not gonna lie to you, but it's going to be much quicker and much more forgiving for taking astro photos of deep sky objects. Again, Maksutovs are not really suited for taking deep sky objects, but that reduction will help speed up the telescope a little bit more, and f 7.6 is much better than f 11.8. This telescope will be ideally suited for imaging smaller deep sky objects which are really small, like planetary nebula, really small galaxies. So this is an ideal scope for those particular targets. Not great for wide field. I would not recommend a telescope like this for wide field, but for really small deep sky objects, yes, the exposure time is going to be a lot longer. You need to really maximize your exposure a lot longer, so guiding is much more crucial. So f 7.6, I believe, round those figures, obviously f 7.4 to f 7.6, round those figures is great with this focal reducer to speed this telescope up. Right then everyone, as you can see, we've got our super tuned Mac. Now as you can see, this is risky business because as we look up in the sky, we've got a gibbous moon. Now April, fantastic for galaxies, however bit of a challenge when you're trying to image when the moon is up. So as you can see, we've got the Antares f6.3 reducer and corrector, and obviously you can see where we've just done the modified scope rings. I've added a QHY guide scope with the zoom camera, the ISI 120, and we're using PhD guiding, and we're guiding extremely well. All right, extremely well. And in fact, we're going to show you the image using the Canon 600D, which is modified, and as we're taking the shot we will see right, so it's taking the shot. So what we'll do is I'll just cancel that. I'm just gonna find our picture. Just bear with me. Right, so now with that reducer that I'm using, we're reducing down to f, I believe 7.8, and we can see already the galaxy there, which is quite a challenge. You can just see it. We have got a halo, which is the restriction in the eyepiece holder, and that's what gives you the halo. So I'm not really happy, even though it speeded up the optics. You can see we've got this vignetting effect. To eliminate that effect, you have to take flat frames to eliminate this horrible vignetting effect. But we are getting the galaxy at 3 minutes exposure at ISO 800. Not a great deal of detail. You can just see the center core there of the Galaxy Messier 101, the pinwheel galaxy, and this is a very tricky moment when you're trying to image galaxies and deep sky stuff at this sky conditions. But we've got good tracking. We'll just zoom in so we can see. Yeah, we've got some good tracking there. Yeah, you can just see the galaxy right in the middle. We're bang on in the middle. However, it's not ideal conditions at all. And we're just going to take a closer look on PhD guiding. Again, I've got a crappy laptop. I can't really do multiple guiding. But I've been guiding quite well with just a single star. Ideally, I would like to see the graph. It's all over the place, but I'm not actually too fussed about these graphs, right? As long as you're correcting, all right, that's all you need. So guiding is going to be very hard with a long focal length telescope, even when it's been reduced. So it's going to be very hard, and to be honest with you, I'd rather have the mount getting corrected. As you see, it's all over the place. Seeing again is not great, so we've got some slight haze there, but I'm not really too fussed, to be honest with you. We're getting some good guiding there, and that's all you need. Alright, it's always going to be a challenge with a Maksutov, but yes, we have got the galaxy. in its former glory. It's just I'm not happy what that reducer has done. I'm not getting any weird artifacts, so that's one good thing. So I'm not getting any weird artifacts. I'm just getting, I think the stars around the edges are also a bit weird as well. But 3 minutes exposure time, ISO 800. I think I'm really pushing my luck here, really pushing it, which is a real shame, because I think really I should go for something else, to be honest with you. Even though I like to take the pictures of this galaxy, it's just I'm not getting the wow factor there because of that moonshine. And I am using, yeah, you get some weird artifacts as well. Stars don't seem to be that great as well, so it's either me nudging the mounts back and forth and all that. So as you can see, imaging with the Maksutov is always going to be tricky. Alright, so the upgrades have helped massively, as those scope rings are much better. It does support the main optical tube much better, alright, and it does balance very well on the HEQ5 mount. So scope rings are a definite must. I think all telescopes, even Maksutovs, should have scope rings. I don't know why Skywatcher continue to make Maksutovs with the horrible just bolt-on bracket, the dovetail bracket, which is flimsy and it's only held in by 2 tiny screws. Personally, these William Optics scope rings are a definite must-have with this telescope. And I can also mount other accessories on there, as well as a small guide scope. So it does open up for improvement here. But yes, not a great image. I might have to go for something else, because this is really is a challenge with the moon being up, and I'm not getting the wow factor on the Galaxy, I'm afraid. Real shame, because I've got the Galaxy perfectly in there and it looks absolutely amazing. So if I had better sky conditions and the moon not up, then this would have been an awesome shot. So I don't know if it's if I should just lower the exposure and just keep taking the shots like that, but we'll see about that. So yeah, okay, mixed feelings about this tonight, and we'll see where we get on. So with that Celestron 6.3 focal reducer, I didn't like the coma effects on the Maksutov, and don't get me wrong, I did have the vignetting, which is, you just can't eliminate that, alright? It's just the way it is with the Maksutov, with that narrow restriction in the eyepiece holder of the opening of 27mm. You're not going to eliminate that vignetting to a certain degree. So the only way you could do that was to take flat frames, or when you stack the image, you can crop out the vignetting that way through Deep Sky Stacker or any stacking software. So I love the speed. The speed was great at f7.4, 7.6. Alright, it was much quicker than the f11, which I tried to, obviously I was imaging a globular cluster through that. It was very slow. So it did help to capture, it did help me to capture that Galaxy 101 at 2 minutes exposure time. Pity that I couldn't get it even longer because of the moon, but we managed to get a reasonable image through that Maksutov. However, I looked and researched all the way around on the internet, and I managed to find another solution. So as we got here is we've got a TS CCD 47. Now I ordered this from 365 Astronomy. This is actually a telescope service product, and it cost £219. It's a bit pricey for what it is, But as we take a closer look, we will see that this is a telescope service product, and again it's CCD 47. Actually this is a mistake. This is supposed to be a CCD 67, and what that is there's two variants. There's actually a focal reducer from Astrophysics, and that is a CCD 67 as well. But basically both brands are basically the same field flattener and focal reducer. As you can see here, we've got a coated optics. I think it's a 2-element design, and this is actually designed for a Ritchie-Crichton telescopes to help to reduce to speed up the optics on a Ritchie-Crichton. This works between f18 to f8, but this is actually a really good reducer lens for Maksutov. Believe it or not, if you check out, I've also researched on this for the Astrophysics, and the Astrophysics, their brand was designed for Maksutov, and actually a 12-inch Maksutov at obviously a much more slower ratio of f14, and they actually made a focal reducer which is the CCD 67 designed with that telescope. So actually this rebrand focal reducer was actually initially designed for a Maksutov anyway. So again, check it out at the bottom. I have linked the website of the Astrophysics design, but practically the telescope service is the same sort of design as the Astrophysics one. So this is the reducer lens, and this will work with any Maksutov. This will work with small, obviously largest chip sensors up to obviously crop sensor cameras like a DSLR, and it can work with 4 1/3 sensors of Astro cameras. So this will be a great addition to help towards the Maksutov 180 as well, and the Maksutov 150 and other Maksutovs as well, providing your Maksutov is in operating focal lengths of f8 to f18. This reducer will work with most Maksutovs and Ritchie-Crichton telescopes. So as you can see, this will help to speed up the telescope on my Maksutov of my 127 up obviously down to f7.9. So it's not going to be as fast as the Celestron focal reducer, which is round about f7.4 to f7.6, round that mark, but it's still going to be a lot less than f8 without a doubt. So yes, it will reduce it, obviously not as much or effective as the Celestron focal reducer. But don't get me wrong, this reducer lens, what I'm trying to do is trying to minimize as much as the vignetting as possible, reduce it to a manageable amount, but also the main concern is to actually correct the stars a little bit better and reduce that coma effect. So if you check it out on the website, the Astrophysics one does highlight it's there to reduce the coma as well, the coma effect. So this would be a great upgrade for your Maksutov 127 all the way up to the 180. The operating distances for this to work effectively to reduce, obviously to help speed up the optics, but also make sure it works properly, you need an air gap between 70 to 90 millimeters. Ideally, the magic number with this to work is 85 millimeters air gap from the lens element all the way up to the camera sensor, so that you get the best maximum possible correction as needed. So to do this, you're going to need, if you're going to fit this to a DSLR, you'll need a DSLR T-ring like this. All right, this is an M48 thread. All right, and with that, you're going to need a 30mm spacer with an M48 thread, and this will screw on like so. So 30mm spacing and 11mm spacing, and this will fit onto my modified Canon 600D like so. Alright, and obviously I need to locate, but there we go, it's all locked in place like so. So now fit the reducer lens like so, and you screw it in like so. Then with the back focus from the camera sensor body, that's 44mm. Then we've got the T-ring, which is 11mm, and then with spacing of 30mm, we should be in the ideal focal air gap of 85mm for this reducer lens to work effectively. The good thing is, because it's got an M48 thread, you can also fit 2-inch filters. Here's I have an Optolong L Pro filter that just screws in there very nicely onto the setup like so. So we've now got the whole system like that. So now what we'll do is remove the eyepiece holder and the Antares or Celestron focal reducer. Alright, we need to get rid of that. This you need to remove completely. You can't have two correctors work together. It does not work with the Maksutov. Alright, you will not achieve focus, plus the images will be blurred. You then screw back the eyepiece holder. Like so, and then with that we then install the new reducer from Telescope Service. We'll put the CCD 67, not 47, but really it is actually 67, and then we'll put that in there like so, lock the thumb screws, and then voila, we should have an f7.9 Maksutov instead of the 11.8 that you get with this telescope. So we'll have a look now on our super tuned Mach 127, and as you can see, it really has darkened the tube. The optical tube with that flocking, it really is quite effective. So a massive difference on the flocking that will help to improve the contrast. The scope rings, the 145mm diameter scope rings from ORION Optics, fit perfectly on the Losmandy Dovetail. Nice and much more secure. We're not relying on the Skywatcher really crappy Dovetail that's got issue with this scope. Personally, I think they should all be supplied with decent scope rings, or at least a decent Vixen Dovetail with the scope rings as well. And we've got a nice sturdy mounting around the optical tube. So we'll take a close look round, and we've got the DSLR modified Canon 600D. I've got the L Pro filter from Optolong. That's fitted, so it will show you this weird sort of purpley sort of look to it. But what our main concern is, we are using the CCD 67 from Telescope Service. Well, 47, they've branded it. And as you can see, with that focal reducer of f7.9, we have got some hint of vignetting around the edges. You can see the dark edges there. And if I lower the exposure, you'll get to see it a little bit better. As you can see, that is the most I can get to reduce the vignetting. So yes, there's improvement on the vignetting. Not as bad as the Celestron one, the 6.3 focal reducer. That's pretty bad. You can actually see the full disc all the way around. Here, with this reducer from Telescope Series, it's only around the edges. So you're still going to have to take dark frames, and you're still going to have to, you know, if you're processing it, you can crop the image as well. So you're not going to eliminate this vignetting because of that restriction in the eyepiece holder of this optical telescope. It's the way it is with this Mach 127. I don't know why Skywatcher have done this really small restriction, but at least it's better than nothing. All right, it literally is better than nothing. So as you can see there, you know, it's just the way it is. All right, but we've got some massive improvements already with the setup. I really can't wait to test this telescope out. All right, it really is. I'm really looking forward to how this is going to perform. So then everyone, tried another night, and luckily we've got some clear night, and finally, and I must admit, it's been very frustrating for the past month or so, not being able to have any clear skies, and also this is late August, so this is the time for me to manage to start imaging because I live in Scotland. Now what I have done is I've done a few changes on the existing Maksutov, and I've got this new rail that I converted into a handrail so I can pick it up by hand. It's a very nice little rail for the price. Alright, I will link the description below, alright, how to order this. I got this from eBay. It's a really good design, and I can clamp my guide scope on there, not a problem. We are currently using the CCD47 focal reducer from Telescope Service, and we are imaging at the moment the Dumbbell Nebula. So I like the Dumbbell Nebula. It's a really nice planetary nebula. It's quite big, and it's been a bit of a pain setting this up because of the passing cloud. Now as you see there with my observatory, I was actually wanting to image with my Newtonian, but this passing cloud is just playing a havoc, and I'm not being able to get any sort of decent imaging, so I've just sacked it off and just focused on the super tuned Maksutov and see how it performs. So at the moment we're taking 5 minutes exposure at ISO 800 using the CCD47 focal reducer, and I must admit I don't know what's gonna perform, but obviously my focal ratio has speeded up to around about 7.8, which is still pretty slow. But the thing is, what I wanted to try out is the CCD47. Apparently it's really good at correcting all the elongated stars. Plus we've tested it out also earlier on in the video to see if we get some vignetting. So at the moment it's quite warm, so the camera will have pixelated noise on there, so it's quite a warm night. So obviously it's a real shame, it's just one of those things, so I have to take a lot of dark frames to compensate for that. So at the moment we're coming up to around about 4 minutes, and we are guiding, so I've been using PhD guiding with the setup, and we'll see how we get on. Looks like it's glitched out again. Oh great. Oh, it's just one of them things, isn't it? It's just one of those things. So what I'll do is I'll just check the image anyway, because I think the guiding's not worked. Oh brilliant. It's just one of those things, eh? So we'll come to 5 minutes exposure. Right, we have got the dumbbell, but as we see we've got star trailing. Oh, that's just absolute nightmare. So I'm going to have to try and restart the auto guiding again. As you can see there, it's there. As you can see, it's there. But yeah, I need to restart the PhD guiding. So we'll try again, and yeah, I'll recalibrate PhD guiding and then try again. Hopefully the cloud's still playable. It's just one of those things, as you can see there. Yeah, it's just one of those bloody things. I know it's all working. It's just one of those things. So what I'll do is I'll stop it and then it's going to recalibrate it and restart it again. But this is real astronomy. End of the day, this is what happens. You know, if your auto guiding setup decides to not play a ball, it's just one of those things. So I'm just gonna pick a star, reasonably faint, yeah. No, stop that, stop that. I'll have to recalibrate that. So I'll get back to you and see how we get on. Finally, I've sorted out my guiding. What it was is the ST4 lead got damaged. I don't know why it got twisted, so I've just replaced the ST4 lead for another one and then restart PhD guiding. So I looped it, then start the calibration, and now it's starting to behave itself. So like always, it's just one of those things, isn't it? And end of the day, it's like, you know, cable issues, things are snagging, cause software issues and stuff like that. Now we're guiding a lot better now, and like I say, even with f7.8 on the Maksutov, it's guiding really well with the 32mm guide scope. So far it looks promising. We've got plenty of stars in PhD guiding. We're going to move over, see how long we've got. Again, I'm risking, try not to capture any stray light. As you can see, I've got the Maksutov now tracking on the Dumbbell Nebula, which is the Messier 27. I love this nebula, it's always a firm favourite of mine. But we're using that CCD 47 and see what sort of image quality we'll get from this. So at the moment we're coming up to about 4 minutes now, and hopefully, fingers crossed, everything's behaving itself. So I'm keeping very low so I don't want to capture, don't want to get stray light over the camera. So at the moment we're almost there. It's just about done now. 5 minutes is a long time, but you need a lot of exposure when you're taking deep sky objects. And the Maksutov is, even though it's speed up with a focal ratio, it's better than f11 or f12. f7.8 is still pretty slow, but it's a lot quicker. It's manageable. If you're trying to image really f11 or f12, it's very frustrating. So it's taking a shot. Right. Okay. So what we'll do is we take a close look on and see what we get. Wow, that is pretty impressive. I just dim down that so you can see.
camera. Look there. Right. See what we got there. Take a zoom in. Wow, that is not bad at all. Look at that. So we have got the dumbbell. The stars looked corrected quite well. I can't even see the vignetting around there. So like we did with the others, we did get a lot of vignetting, but here we don't seem to get much vignetting there. So I don't know if that's not enough exposure time. But we've got the major structure, the colour, the stars look very sharp, and this is really good. Yeah, that looks absolutely amazing. So wow, I can't see no vignette in there. I don't know if that's just not enough exposure or what. But 5 minutes is pretty long, and this is ISO 800. All the stars look really well corrected as well, and I must admit that's actually a very good image. Yes, f7.8 is pretty slow, but I'm actually really impressed with that, because you know the good thing about that is obviously we'll take a closer look when we show you later on the video, but that is really good. I'm actually really impressed with that. And the vignetting, I could hardly see that at all. So what we'll do is I'm going to take loads of those shots. Obviously I don't have much time because it's still summer, and the main problem with that is I only got a few hours of darkness. So yeah, it's not ideal to use a slow telescope when you've got a short amount of time. But looking at those images, I'm actually really impressed that we've got the structure and the colour of the dumbbell nebula. And I must admit, I'm really impressed with that, because I couldn't see any vignetting in there. So I don't know if that's I haven't put enough exposure time, but I couldn't see any vignette in there, which I don't know if that's it could be loads of possibilities. But when I look at that image there, I've got crisp stars all the way across the field, got the nebula right in the middle, and I'm happy with those results. So that CCD47 has done a massive change over the Celestron. The Celestron focal reducer, the f6.3, that did have a lot of halo. Now you had that vignetting around the edges pretty bad. So what you have to do is you have to clip or crop the image after you just stacked it, cut out that vignetting. But you can also take flat frames as well, which will eliminate some of that vignetting as well. But apart from that, I'm really impressed with that 47, that from Telescope Service, that focal reducer there. Don't forget, this is actually designed for a Ritchie Crichton telescope, but if you look on the actual the old article, this similar design from Astrophysics was actually designed for a bigger Maksutov. So this actually is a focal reducer purposely designed for Maksutovs. So apart from that, I'm really impressed with the results. 5 minutes exposure time, and I just couldn't see no vignetting, and the stars appear to be very sharp all the way across the field. That's really impressive. I must say, that's a much better image than the Celestron, the f6 point, the 6.3 focal reducer. But apart from that, that looks a lot better. it's a real shame that I couldn't get the Galaxy with that Celestron. Obviously the Galaxy from the Messier 101. I mean, that was really I did get some detail there, but I didn't have enough exposure time. Here, 5 minutes, you know, you've got to really be pushing it. I could reach 10 minutes, I could push this to about 10 minutes, but then I'm not going to get as much images. So 5 minutes is okay for this telescope. End of the day, I'm still getting a lot of detail there on that nebula, and that's what you want, right? So we can always get more detail when we stack more of these images, and then hopefully we get some decent results. But I'm really impressed. I must admit, that's actually shocked me, because when I don't get the vignette and I tested it out, test row, and I did get some vignetting around the sides, but I just couldn't see any at all on that image. So I don't know if that's because it's not enough, you know, you need to really up the exposure to really pump it out. But then I don't want to overexpose either, because I've got a lot of hazy cloud, and that causes problems with the images. If you've got hazy cloud, you end up capturing some of that cloud as well. But that's really good. That's really good, I must admit. So I'm just going to take off. We'll wait now. We'll check that image again after this next shot, because that's really good. Okay, we've got the shot again. I'm going to show you now, because better to show you again, because this was probably sheer luck. Focus. So it's not easy trying to sort this out. Oh wow. Yeah. That's really good. Yeah, that's really good. All the stars seem to be sharp and pinpointed all across the field. Wow, that's really good, guys and girls and everyone. Yeah, I'm absolutely over the moon with this one. And I do love the colour of what the Maksutov brings out on this setup. Yeah, that's really good. I'm not going to lie to you, that is pretty good for a Maksutov. Alright, got some nice good detail there. So overall, that's, what can I say, guys and girls and everyone? Wow, much better. So apart from a disappointing setup, really pity I couldn't get the Quattro going, because I'd love to have got that going and start taking some awesome images. But hey, let's focus on the Mac and let's get those images. So apart from that, wish me luck everyone, and see how I get on. So then everyone, what I've done is I've just rechecked. I'm just sort of tinkering away at my existing setup. Now, as you can see here, I have basically took out the spacings that I've used, and because also I was imaging the nebula, the M27 Dumbbell Nebula, and yes, there was some reduction, which helped a lot to speed up the telescope. And the thing is, it's like, it seems a bit softer. So, and also I still got some vignetting. So the image was a little bit soft. I did have a little bit of coma around the edges, and also the vignetting was still prominent. Now, what I've done here, I've been reading the Astrophysics website, and believe it or not, the telecompressor on that variant has, on the actual reducer itself, does actually use up 60mm from the reducer. So in theory, my camera has 44 back focus from the center, has 44mm back focus from the sensor, and also you got to add 11mm on the T-ring. So what that does is, as you can see here, if I just take this setup here, you can see what I've just done. The reducer, well, it gets 60mm back focus from the reducer itself. There's the T-ring, and then the camera. So basically what I've done is just screwed on, and here it's on the T-ring directly to the camera. So that will give me an operating distance of around 71mm. As I checked out the Astrophysics website, I noticed that the reducer can operate between 70 to around about 94, probably around those figures there of those distances. So you can operate the telecompressor between different varying of distances, and this will give me a reduction of 0.7 times, which is not much. It is a reduction, but it's nowhere near the reduction that I needed for the 0.67 times. But the 0.7 times seems to be better. And as we take a closer look, we've got a much sharper image, though the reduction is not as aggressive compared to what I initially used using that 30mm spacer. So this is just purely the actual reducer screwed in directly onto the T-ring. And as you can see, I've lowered it down to 4,000s, 1 and 4,000 exposure time, and the image appears somewhat a lot sharper. Although I'm not only going to get a reduction of 0.7 times, but it's a lot better, a lot more refined image. And as I focus through in and out, the image quality is so much better. So let me just readjust it so you can see. I'm just using the electronic focuser, so it gives me a much more precise. Obviously it's not ideal to, that's probably the sharpest focus I can get at the moment. Yeah, it seems a lot better. The vignetting is still on the edges, right? That's lowered down. If I just lower the ISO, maybe that will show up a bit more. Oh, not too much. So there's a little bit of vignetting, but it's not that bad. And it's a lot better than when I was using initially with a 30mm spacer. Obviously, reading the Astrophysics website, this, I know it's a telescope service CCD 47, but the concept of this reducer seems to be very much the same as the Astrophysics. And yes, I haven't got much of a reduction, of 0.7 times, but 0.7 times is damn sight better. But it's really the image quality and eliminate as much of the vignette as possible. But this is very interesting stuff because now this is a lot more reduced. Obviously, this is a lot more fine. This is a more razor sharp image. So hopefully we'll give this a try and see if I get any improvement. But this looks a lot more promising. So, what do you reckon, everyone? I must admit, the Maksutov is so much better after the Super Tune, and as you can see with those images, you know, I've tested this telescope quite vigorously, and I must admit, like with the reducers that I've used, the reducer lens, the Antares reducer lens, the f6.3, I wasn't particularly happy about. One with the vignetting effect, which is quite a lot. Usually to get around that, you could use smaller sensors like a 533 camera or something that's like a square format. You probably get away with on that vignetting using that reducer lens. But the whole purpose was to test the DSLR, because at the end of the day most people have DSLR cameras, and the Maksutov, the 127 Maksutov is quite hard to capture using capture Astro images through a DSLR camera. Bear in mind that I am using a 600D, which is quite a small ASPC camera half crop sensor, which is diagonally wise, it's 23mm. So it's quite a large sensor, and I really was pushing the limits and testing out that CCD 47 reducer. It's I must admit it has worked a lot better, and I must admit a lot better than the Antares 6.3 reducer lens. So yes, it might make it slower. Obviously I have f7.9, and obviously we're using that, taking off that 30mm spacer, I'm only achieving around that f8.3, which yes, it's still pretty slow, but it's downside improvement over the 11.8 that you get standard with this telescope. Unfortunately, I'm a bit disappointed that I'm not being able to test it out without that spacer, but maybe in the next video I will test out the Super Tune Mac and see how it really performs without a spacer. But so far, the results so far after testing it out, it looks very promising. So obviously the only thing that's against me is clear skies. So at the moment I'll just have to wait for some more clear skies when the weather does change, because obviously the UK weather is usually bad at this time now, September. But it's a real shame that I'm not being able to test it out without that 30mm spacing. So using that 71mm spacing give me the f8.3, which is, I could say, will be slow, but it's going to be better. But the thing is, what I was trying to do is trying to get the image a little bit better, make it a little bit more sharper, and it does appear sharper. It does look like there is improvement, and the vignetting effect is not as bad. But using cameras with bigger sensors, it's not going to be possible. So 600D or below is achievable. So smaller sensors are really ideally suited for the Celestron or the Antares focal reducer and the CCD 47 from Telescope Service. If you've got the Astrophysics one, the CCD 67, that is very similar built to the Telescope Service. And I can't agree anymore that the scope rings are so much better on a decent Losmandy, and the flocking has helped with the contrast a lot more. Alright, and it really is quite an impressive scope now. It's actually up to a certain standard that I think that Skywatcher should have done in the first place, is make it better, particularly that horrible dovetail that they use. And you know, I just don't get why they use it, because obviously it's cheaper to make. But saying that, there are one or two Astro channels out there. Christmas is coming up, and bear in mind that there's a lot of hype at the moment. There's a lot of Astro channels are doing quick reviews, yes again, because particularly over Christmas, and they are reviewing a lot of these Ziv Bonnie's
the Zip Bonnie 127 Mac. Now that's a Rumak Maksutov, and there's actually 2 or 3 things that's good about that scope at the moment, which there's going to be a lot of hype over this Christmas, and there's a lot of channels are jumping on that, racing on there. But the Zip Bonnie has got nice touches on there, and one is that it does actually have adapters, so you can connect your 2-inch format, so it has nose pieces. It also has a macro focuser, which is a 10:1 focuser. The other thing is, because it's a Rumak Maksutov, it also has collimation screws on the secondary mirror, so it's collimatable on that side. So the primary mirror at the back is fixed. It's not like the Skywatcher Maksutov, where most of the adjustments are at the back of the rear mirror cell. And the best thing with the Zip Bonnie, it does include a ×6.5 reducer lens, which means that it can speed up that telescope to around about 7.6. So it's the only Maksutov that comes with a lot of packages, a lot of extras, and don't get me wrong, with that reducer lens, I think that Skywatcher really need to pay close attention to that model, because that Zip Bonnie model, that Maksutov, has got some nice touches on there. Because at the moment, the Maksutov from Skywatcher is showing a bit of its age, and there are newer Maksutovs coming out offering much more optional stuff with it, and the reducer lens, so that it enables people to take astro photos using a Maksutov. And to be honest with you, I think the Skywatcher really needs to up the game. Now, bear in mind, the Zip Bonnie variant, the 127 Mac, does actually, it does have all those nice features, but they still haven't focused on changing to scope rings and onto a better dovetail. They are still fixing that Vixen dovetail onto the optical tube, which again, I think is such a stupid design. It really is. And to be honest, it's like I say, it's only relying on 2 small screws, and I bet you it's the same type as it is with the Skywatcher. End of the day, I'm not going to review this Zip Bonnie 127 Mac, because to be honest with you, I've already got a damn good telescope, and the Skywatcher's telescope like this is still pretty good. Yes, it's showing its age, but the whole purpose of this video was to show to you guys and girls and everyone, if you own a Maksutov from Skywatcher or a similar build to this one, this video will help you improve on that telescope and make it better. Bear in mind, the Zip Bonnie is still a pretty pricey telescope at £439. It's, like I say, Skywatcher, I think, needs to really up the game and start looking at improving on the existing 127 Mac, because believe me, it is a big seller, and the Skywatcher Maksutov, the 127 range, and the other Maksutovs really are a big seller, particularly this model, because it's big enough, it's compact enough, and it will show you most objects. It's a really nice visual telescope as well as astrophotography. Obviously not great for astrophotography, but we've achieved it by showing you in this video that it is very capable of taking great astro images. I think that Skywatcher need to pay close attention, because the competition is getting tough, and Zip Bonnie has already put out a reducer lens with their package with their 127 Mac. So it really is tough competition, and I'm certain that there are some viewers that will probably lean towards the Zip Bonnie in favour of that, because the Skywatcher does have certain things that's lacking. So if you do have a Skywatcher Maksutov or similar build to this, please use this video to help you guys and girls and everyone. This will save you money in the long run, but it gives you some alternative, to use the existing telescope that you have, because the Maksutov here, this Skywatcher, the optics are pretty good, and to be honest with you, looking at the Zip Bonnie, they are very similar build. Alright, so the only selling points is because of the 10:1 focuser, the collimatable secondary mirror, and then you've got the reducer lens that comes with it, which will be the biggest seller. That will be the biggest selling point of that telescope. because believe me, there will be a lot of people will be personally going for that Maksutov purely for that reducer lens, and it still has the same focal length, it still has the same aperture. It's virtually the same scope, but just got some nice touches to it. So St. Bonner really upped the game here, and if I was Skywatcher, I think that they should be worried, to be honest with you. And there'll be a lot of videos out there that will be reviewing this. Personally, I'm not going to get the St. Bonner Maksutov because at the end of the day, I've already got a decent telescope right here. So don't get me wrong, it's a real shame that I can't test it out without that space. It's a real shame. But looking at those images, we've got some, I would say they were awesome results, because there are some imperfections in the images, purely because I think I had a slight bit of coma, even with the CCD 47 lens. With the Antares reducer, I must admit the coma was pretty bad actually. But it's not bad images, and even if you use without a reducer lens, you can still use the Maksutov at the f11.8, which is perfectly fine. It just means that you need to take longer exposures and making sure that your guiding is perfect, because longer focal lengths are very hard to guide. Alright, so this setup that I got here will last me for a lifetime. Alright, it really is, because this is where the Skywatcher should be built, as that, like that particular design, with a decent dovetail, decent scope rings, and obviously the optical tube is actually flocked, you know what I mean? And it's up to the standard that I want in a scope, the Maksutov in particular. But apart from that, also I mentioned in my Astro imaging session that I did this little rail. Now this rail, I will provide the links below. It consists with aluminium spacers and the bolts to fit that certain scope ring. All right, it may be different on your telescope, but if you're interested, I will provide the links below. But this is relatively a good modification. Plus, it gives you a nice little carry handle, and again, that's something that you can do when you're using scope rings, because you can adapt different things onto the Maksutov. As you see on the images, they're not bad images. I wouldn't say they're absolutely outstanding, but at least there's one thing that we have done and what we have achieved is I've able to image my Maksutov at a decent focal length, focal ratio, and being able to achieve some good results. Obviously there will be a part 2, because I will be testing out this scope again without that spacer to see how it really performs. So I'm working at f8.3, which is not fast, but it's better than it is standard. But to all that on, please do use this video as a guide, alright everyone. In particular, I would definitely recommend, I would say the Antares focal reducers is okay, but I think that reducer lens from telescope service, the CCD 47, or the Astrophysics CCD 67, practically they are the same sort of telescope, they're the same reducer lens, right? And they are very, very close. They're literally exactly the same. Please check out the description for the information regarding that CCD 47 and the Astrophysics one, because they are very similar build. And the thing that I like about the reducer lens is that it does give you varying focal ratios. So if you put it to the minimum of 70 millimeters, you're going to get like pretty low sort of reduction. But when you increase that distance to 90 millimeters, for example, you're going to increase the focal ratio, making the focal ratio much faster. So that's how it works like, but it gives you the ability to, different varying of focal ratios. So that, and yes, it is expensive for what it is. Again, please check out 365 Astronomy. Alright, they've got a lot of these reducer lenses, and I would recommend it, because to be honest with you, it's much better than the Celestial one. And I'm glad in a way that it's a reducer lens that actually is initially designed for a Maksutov, which I was actually quite shocked.
But saying that, it's like, it's not very popular, so there'll be loads of those available. So again, if you're interested in buying one, I would highly recommend it, because it does actually improve on your images. As you saw in the last actual image session with the dumbbell, you could see the stars are a lot better. There is a little bit of coma, but it's more or less around the sides. So the one way you can get around it is you can crop, use the photo editing software like Photoshop, for example, and you can crop out the bit where it's not corrected very well. But we'll see what we get next time when the skies do clear again, and we'll get to test out its performance. Now, the other recommendation I would advise as well is, like, after you've done all the modification stuff, Maksutovs are renowned for being dew magnets, which means that moisture will collectively collect on the meniscus lens, which is a big problem with the Maksutov. And don't get me wrong, the Maksutov that I've got, I've had this for many years, I've had no problems with mould or anything that's going to ruin the optics. Now, if you want to keep the telescope long term, so it will last a lifetime, I would strongly advise using something like this. This is a desiccant cap. Alright, it has desiccant beads inside there, or you can use sachets, which basically these desiccants will draw out the moisture. So when you're not using your telescope, bring it indoors, stick this into the eyepiece holder. Desiccant caps will draw out all the trapped moisture in this closed tube design. And believe me, the desiccant beads or sachets will draw out all that remaining moisture that's trapped between the meniscus lens, and it's a huge problem. If you don't do that, you put it as, once you're not using the telescope, this will draw out all the remaining moisture, alright, and it will stop the mould from forming onto your lens and ruining the optics, alright, which is a very costly affair. Alright, it's very difficult to clean and also repair. But preventive measure is always key, and for circa £35 for First Light Optics, right, you can buy yourself a decent desiccant cap, and all you do is, when the desiccant beads will draw out the moisture, they change colour. So the ones I've used is Baader beads, and they change to orange to green. Once they get to green, it means they're already dissipated. Basically, it can't draw out much moisture, so you have to recharge these beads by sticking the remaining beads into the oven at 150 degrees to draw all the moisture out, to dry them out, and they'll go back to the original orange colour. Very highly recommended, £35, and you probably pay £20 for the desiccant. Alright, very well worth the investment in the long run. And I've had this telescope for, wow, coming up to 10 years, and I've still had no problems with this horrible mould that forms in the lens system. The other thing, if that's a bit expensive, alternatively, check out Oniissy. Alright, and in Oniissy, I purchase from Astro Tools UK to use. I bought this from this company, from Oniissy, and this is a 2-inch format desiccant cap. Again, they provide the sachets with it, or you can use silica beads. And with this design, again, it has a screw-on type, alright, so you can unscrew it. This is been made in a certain way that it's been 3D printed, and it's plastic. But don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with 3D printed plastic. And to be honest with you, they cost around £12. And you do get a desiccant from Astro UK. So Astro Tools UK, please check them out below. It costs £12, alright, and like I say, well made, and it fits perfectly on my setup. And again, this will do exactly the same as the more expensive desiccant. There's no difference. All they are is just a cap. There's slots in there, but this is an alternative, cheaper option, right? And it will save you your telescope investment for quite some time. Alright. Thanks for watching. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to hit the notifications bell. By hitting that bell, select all will keep you notified for any new videos that I publish out very soon.
Also, don't forget to share this video out. Maybe someone else has got this particular model and they would like to really enhance their equipment. So this video will help them in the long run. So to that one, thanks again, thanks for watching, and I wish you all clear skies.